So, no Sunday drive today. More of a Sunday wrenching. Tom, you know anything about that?
Well, when you own a Turbo Trans Am, you gotta prepare for your Sunday drives. They don't just happen. We bought this car, and it was the cheapest Trans Am we could find. Because apparently they're worth some money now, and they're not. You can't buy them as easily as I used to throw these cars away in the 80s.
Damn my good taste.
So we're just trying to make it mechanically reliable because we bought it. It has all kinds of problems that it didn't have when it was brand new. You know, these cars were not great, but they don't have to be as packed into as this one is. We're trying to fix everything to make it usable.
So we started yesterday, and the idea was, we're just gonna take off the bad parts. But so far we haven't found any good parts, so we just kept taking off stuff. You can see our pile's been growing over here.
Oh yeah, well, like this turbo system, it had a massive oil leak, and this was the drain hose that was on it, which actually goes on the back side. And goes right there. But there was no clamps on this, and this is not the stock setup. So it was a big oil leak.
Yeah, there were a couple of signs that someone had been messing around in here before us, and maybe that person wasn't as proud of their work as they should be.
That's a good way of putting it. So this is the 1981 Pontiac Trans Am draw-through turbo setup. You put your quadrajet right there, you got your turbo right there, and in some manner it seems to function.
The draw-through turbo is so upsetting to the wiener dog that he is crying out here. He's very upset. Hi, buddy. It's okay. We're gonna make it work. He doesn't believe me.
So what we're trying, the main thing we wanted to fix first was the oil leak problem. And we're going to do valve cover gaskets too. And valve cover gaskets on this engine are quite involved because they are buried. We've already taken everything off, but they are buried below everything.
Why don't you point out the valve covers in case there's anyone who's never seen one?
There you go. Valve cover 1, valve cover 2.
Right there. So you can see that even with a bunch of stuff removed, it's still kind of difficult to get to them.
This is the last Pontiac V8 made, a real Pontiac, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't call it that because real Pontiacs are actually better than this one. This is the 301 V8. Very small displacement. I don't know what the thinking was of the engineering at the time, but they really tried to make a tiny V8 and turbocharge it and try and get it to equal the power of a stock 400, normally aspirated circa 1978, which they came up a little bit short, even with the turbocharger. But it is what it is. Some weird. The intake manifold is very strange on this. I don't know if you can see that, but that is the main intake where the air fuel is boosted into the manifold.
Put a finger in there so they can see how shallow that is.
Yeah, it's that long. so the air fuel immediately has to make a 90-degree turn to rush off to the cylinders. And, you know, the whole design is about weight savings. They took a lot of metal out of it. All the bolts are smaller. Everything about it was how light can we make it? How small can we make it? Can we make it more efficient that way? I guess is what they were thinking.
And I mean, I have unfair feelings right now towards this engine because, you know, it might not have run that good when it was brand new, but it definitely didn't run very good when we got it. And I mean, this is a good example. Obviously, this is not engine harness, but that's not supposed to look like that.
Yeah, and actually all the wiring here is all very, very old and compromised. Like this electrical plug is broken. It's actually supposed to be squeezed together to undo it, and I guess that worked fine in 1981, but now it's hard as plastic. It doesn't flex at all. So we're going to be fixing all this wiring. We've got new ends to put on it. We're going to change the wires as needed. We're going to make it as new. All the grounds need to be good. This is the first year of a computer-controlled V8 from General Motors. So it has the standard electrical harness that any Pontiac V8 would have, and then they piggybacked on the computer controls. It's got 2 map sensors. It's got coolant temperature sensors. It's got totally electronic spark timing control. And so all this stuff, the computer is dependent on accurate information going into it. So any bad connection, which these are all bad connections.
All the bad connections.
Is going to affect what the computer sees, and the computer's not going to know what to do.
So does this stuff explain why when we first got this car, it was doing such weird idling and shutting off things?
Well, it was both mechanical and erroneous information to the computer, because the Quadrajet, which we took apart, is a computer-controlled Quadrajet. And so it's got a mixture control solenoid, and you can see it's pretty corroded and shoddy. It's got a throttle position switch, which I obliterated getting out because it was rotten. And it's pretty dirty inside. So right off the bat, I noticed that the boosters were dribbling fuel at idle, which is indicative of a high float level. And so the carburetor needed to be rebuilt. So from a mechanical point of view, you got to fix the basic carburetor first, because even if the electronics don't function on this carburetor, it is still a carburetor, and it'll run and drive fine. It'll default to rich, but it's still going to work. And so all the weird issues that were happening was based on the bad wiring, I believe. And like, here's the distributor, and this wiring is melted together because over time people had worked on this car, and the wiring was not rooted in the factory positions any longer. And so like this wire was caught between the distributor cap and pinched there. Luckily it's actually a ground wire, so it may have enhanced its operation.
It might have been the only good ground on the car, actually.
So, you know, you get a car this old, a lot of people have worked on it, and I think somebody did valve cover gaskets on it, which is why they took all this off. And they were very lazy about putting it back together, and so everything was in the wrong place, getting burned. And, you know, all damaged. Even the spark plug wires are melted because they just had them laying on the exhaust. So you got misfires.
There is, in fairness, there is a lot of very hot exhaust all over the engine bay.
Well, so much so that it needed its own shield to keep from burning off the hood. The Pontiac bird on the hood.
Can't burn off the bird.
No.
There'd been a little bit of work done on the front of the engine as well.
Well, the dampener is actually bad on this car. The bolts are stripped out. There's more of them, and it wobbles. So we've got a new dampener to put on it, so we're going to change that.
Is that why all of the belts were flipped over when we first got it?
Yes. And the timing tab was missing. We've added a timing tab, which is plastic, extremely fragile. And so we're going to fix all that.
I feel ready to fix it. I think we can get it going again. I mean, there are some folks out there who are going to say, why, Tom? Why are we doing this? You know, you could get an LS engine, and all of a sudden we could be fast. We could be on the road.
There are a lot of alternatives. Some people would put older Pontiacs in, but we're going to make this one work.
Yeah.
If it kills me, we're going to make it work. I don't know if it's going to be great, but it's going to be functioning.
Yeah, well, you guys can all check back in about 6 months and see if we're sticking to that one.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just kidding. Check back in right away next week. Subscribe, like us, whatever it is that I'm supposed to say on YouTube videos. Pontiac. Right, Jim?